Growing up, there are two kinds of Pokemon players. The kids who had friends, and the kids who had a Kadabra. Because without someone to trade with, all of the coolest evolutions in game were basically locked behind a social paywall. When I was younger, I remember catching cool Pokemon like Ghastly, Abra, and Machop just to throw them away later once I realized they never reached their full potential. I was quite lonely. But today, I'm making up for a childhood of unevolved Pokemon, beating the game with only trade evolutions. And there's no better game to do it in than Pokemon HeartGold, arguably the peak of trade evos with over 15 available. Now you may be wondering, what changed? Do you finally have friends? No, I have a Pokemon randomizer. Anyways, here are the rules. I can only use trade evolution Pokemon in battle, which includes their pre-evolved forms of course. I must fully evolve every trade evo before the Elite Four, and do my best not to overlevel. Now it's time to finally use the Pokemon my younger self never got to. Let's begin. Starting off my journey, I find myself in a sweet little town called Newbark, and right away I'm able to get my starter, Cyndaquil. And as per usual, he's getting trashed. But before I got the chance, I went on a far journey through Route 29 into Cherry Grove City, and finally up Route 30 where I'd receive a package from Professor Oak. Then backtracked to my little town and caught my menace of a rival stealing a Pokemon from the lab. So of course, we have our first rival battle, but it doesn't really count since Cyndaquil is illegal for this run, so yeah. But soon after, Lyra would show me the ropes of catching Pokemon. And usually your first catch would be, I don't know, a Pidgey, Hoot Hoot, maybe even Rattata. But I needed something greater. A bodybuilding rock, who was conveniently found on Route 46, accessible even before Cherry Grove City. And since it's a female, I decided to name her Gertrude, which I think seems fitting. I then went on to sweep through all of Route 30 and all of Route 31, killing off trainers and wild Pokemon alike. And surely his rock typing came in handy since most of the Pokemon at this level only had access to normal type moves. Even better, upon arriving in Violet City, I find that the gym leader is actually a flying type.
Perfect!
But before I took on that gym, I needed to do some more work at Sprout Tower, where I'd catch my second Pokemon, Ghastly, who's perfect for this challenge, and also a female, so I named her Casperina. Now I know what you're thinking. AJ, you can get an Onix for a Bellsprout in one of the houses. Why haven't you done that? Now while I'm not above cheating, I am above having an Onix on my team. Anyhow, I took on the first gym and absolutely swept through the trainers with Geodude. I then challenged Faulkner the leader and kicked off our battle going Pidgey versus Gertrude. This was an easy one, except for the fact that I couldn't land a hit due to his sand attack, but once I did, Rock Throw took him down. Though his Pidgeotto would end up being a lot stronger, doing some decent damage with Gust and tanking a Rock Throw, and since I had no accuracy to my name, he kept chipping away some health and then started roof spamming, which made it a whole lot worse since I was quickly running out of health in PP. But I ended up getting him down to half, barely surviving a Gust attack, and finally taking his Pidgeotto down with a last Rock Throw, claiming my victory against the first gym leader. Afterwards, I headed south down Route 32, doing lots of battling, getting some levels, and making it to this randomly placed Pokemon Center where I'd be gifted an old rod from a fisherman. Now this item would be essential, giving me the power to catch my third team member of the challenge, Poliwag. Although Poliwrath isn't a trade evolution, Gen 2 introduced the alternative, Politoed, which evolves through being traded with a King's Rock, which led me to catching Poliwag and naming her Toadess. Next, I traveled through Union Cave, training Toadess up to level, then skipped through Route 33 and into Azalea Town. I was more than ready to take on the Bug-type gym, but before I got the chance, I needed to handle some Team Rocket business at the Slowpoke Well, which I believe is their first appearance in the story. But after my Crime Stopper call-up, I was wasting no time challenging the second gym, and yet again, Gertrude would take the lead, sweeping by these trainers thanks to her type advantage. She led me to the leader, Bugsy. We started our battle going Scyther versus Casperina, which wasn't intentional at all, so I switched Gertrude into battle, but Scyther's U-turn would do massive damage despite being ineffective, bringing me to half. Though I was able to get back on his Metapod who'd be switching in, taking her down with a single Rock Throw. Bugsy would then send back in his Scyther, and I knew I'd need to heal up to survive his next U-turn, hoping to hang on just a little longer to take down his Kakuna, which I did, but not before getting poisoned by Poison Sting. Anyhow, Scyther ended up killing Gertrude, as expected, leading me to switch in Casperina. And I figured my best bet would be to paralyze her with Lick, then sacrifice some health with Curse to kill her off slowly, and the plan was working. Although Casperina would be taken down by a U-turn, Toadette would come in clutch to deliver a water gun, bringing her within dying range for Curse, and surviving a U-turn which ultimately led to victory. Another rough battle, but I'll take the W however it comes at this point. Following my second win, as I tried to leave the town, I was stopped in my tracks by Soul. He felt no ways challenging me to a battle right after the gym, and started us off going Ghastly versus Ghastly. But of course, Casperina's stronger, and wipes the floor with him in just a few turns. His second Pokemon was Croconaw, and instead of switching, I used Lick, luckily paralyzing him before getting slaughtered by a bite attack, which led me to switch in Toadette, who'd managed to slowly chip down his health while he wasted his turns using Scary Face and being paralyzed. Eventually, I got him to his last life and finished him off with a water gun. His final Pokemon was Zubat, and I ended up switching in Gertrude, and a single rock though is all it took to bring him down, beating Soul for now. Afterwards, I headed into Ilex Forest, did some far-fetched branch puzzle, and received the HM cut, which was required to move on through the story. But unfortunately, none of my Pokemon could learn it, so I had to bring my old pal Cyndaquil for the one time. But after that, it was smooth sailing, making it out the forest and into Route 34. This route would lead me to the big city, Goldenrod, the home of the third gym. Now don't worry, I know what had to be done. I went back to Route 34 and found myself a Drowsy. Now some of you may be questioning, why Drowsy? He doesn't trade evolve. Well, Machop does. And he's available for trade in the department store. And he even came pre-nicknamed as Muscle. Actually, he's a she, so she's nicknamed Muscle. Whatever. And before you keyboard warriors start commenting how I missed the Abra, don't worry, I got that covered as well. I went back to Route 34 grass, rummaged around a little, and found the Abra, who's practically the poster boy of trait evolution. I caught her on the first try and ended up naming her Blink. And with all of these females on my team, I'm stuck here wondering, how are we gonna get anything done? Misogyny? Anyone? Okay. Now with an almost full team and our newly acquired Machop, I was ready to take on Hearthome's normal type gym. I karate chopped through some trainers and made it to the leader, Whitney. And surprisingly, this was the easiest win of the game. First I went up against her Clefairy and one-shotted her with a karate chop. Her only other Pokemon was Miltank, who'd do some decent damage with Stomp, but would ultimately get taken down in 2 turns from some low kicks. This secured me an effortless win and granted me my 3rd gym badge. After the Goldenrod gym, I headed up north through Route 35 and continued my travels through the National Park, a place I'd soon return. But while doing some battling on the following route, 36, my Abra would end up evolving into Kadabra, very well needed. Not too long after, I'd make it out the long stretch of trainer battles and arrive in Ecrutech City. Ecrutech City? I don't know. Now there's quite a lot that happens here. To start, I ended up going east of the city to acquire the HM strength. Then I went to the Burnt Tower, where clearly some cool shit was going on. But before I got to meet the cool shit, I was challenged by Soul once again. Just like last time, we went Ghastly versus Ghastly, and I ended up hitting him with a Confuse Ray and Lick combo, confusing him and paralyzing him effectively. And just 2 more hits took him down afterwards. His second Pokemon was again Croconaw, and I kept Ghastly in to confuse him as well, but got taken down by a bite, which led me to send in Muscle. Luckily for me, the confusion was working and Croconaw would continue to hit himself over the next 2 turns while I took him down with a Revenge and Karate Chop. Easy. His 3rd Pokemon was Zubat, so I switched into Gertrude, but unfortunately he'd use Supersonic, confusing us. Although it didn't affect on the first turn, I wasn't able to one-shot with Rollout, and all of the following turns I'd either hit myself, flinch, or miss an attack. But eventually, I got a rollout to land, taking the bastard down, which led me to his final and newest member, Magnemite. Gertrude managed to get off a rollout before getting wiped, resulting in me switching in Muscle, who delivered the one-shot with Karate Chop, securing me the win. And surprisingly enough, the rival battle was probably more exciting than seeing the legendary trio, because as soon as I arrived, they just ran off. Anyhow, I made my way back to the main part of the city and prepared to enter that 4th gym. Using my newly evolved Kadabra, taking down these trainers were pretty light. Although technically at the type disadvantage here, Ghastly and Haunter's poison typing made them an easy one-shot for Blink Psybeam. But the gym leader now, was a whole different story. Morty and his hoe-ass Gengar would proceed to sweep through my entire team, a clean sweep to be exact. And that's when I realized there's levels to this shit. So I decided to invest some time into upgrading my team and got to training. Thus followed a series of evolutions, and the first one was Ghastly into Haunter. Second was Geodude into Graveler, and finally Poliwag into Poliwhirl, getting everyone up to level 25. Was it overkill? Maybe, but I wasn't gonna lose a second time. So I challenged Morty once more, sending out Blink to start. I not only one-shot his Ghastly, but his Haunter as well, leaving him with only 2 Pokemon left quite early. But his Gengar would put an end to that little streak, one-tapping me with a critical hit Shadow Ball, which was expected. From here, I send in Muscle, and I had a plan. If I could just barely survive that Shadow Ball, I'd be able to deliver a devastating counter with Payback. And while it worked, it barely missed the mark on killing him, which forced me to swap in some bait to save Muscle's life. Still wanting to stick to that plan, I just re-healed Muscle, and once Gertrude was taken out, I sent her back into battle, and executed it once more, this time taking out Gengar for good. Morty then sent out his last Pokemon, Haunter, who would finish off Muscle, but stood no chance against Casparina. He'd get Sucker Punched beyond half health, then finished off with the Shadow Punch, giving me the win against Morty and earning me my 4th gym badge. After the gym victory, it was time to venture on to the next city, so I skipped through Route 39, making my way into Olivine. Here, I'd only be met with disappointment, as the gym leader was gone. To challenge her, they had me climb up a lighthouse, battling trainer after trainer until I made it to the very top, just to find Jasmine, the gym leader, trying to be the next Steve Irwin. She tells me about how Ampharos is sick and needs medicine, and apparently the only place to get it is across the sea. So of course, I venture over the water, battling enough trainers to get an evolution out of Machop, and then landed into Cyanwood City. And although I was on a mission to retrieve some meds, I couldn't help but notice a well-placed gym was actually open to battle. So I let myself get sidetracked and started taking down trainers with Blink. And she led me to their fighting type gym leader, Chuck. We started our battle going Primate versus Blink, and this was another quick one. Blink goes on to decimate the Primate with Psybeam and treats his Poliwrath the same way, getting him low with the first and ending him with the second. In difficulty, I'd say it tied Whitney's normal type gym as the easiest of the run for sure. After crushing that gym challenge, I traveled back to the lighthouse, cured the Ampharos, and readied myself for some back-to-back gym battling at Olivine City. I gotta say, I'm really happy they don't waste your time and let you get straight to it. And I mean that in the most literal sense, since the gym trainers just gave me free passage to take on Jasmine, the steel type gym leader. We kicked things off with Magnemite versus Gertrude. He managed to get off a Sonic Boom, doing its default 20 HP, but we responded with an annihilating Magnitude, putting it down. Her second Pokemon was Steelix, who was looking to get back for his members, and one-shot me with an Iron Tail. Yikes. But I still had Muscle, who'd be perfect as a matchup. I used Low Kick, thinking this would be a one-shotter since, you know, Steelix should theoretically be heavy as fuck, and I didn't even get him to half. But I stuck with it a second turn, getting her low and expecting to take her out on the third. But unfortunately, Muscle would be taken down as well by another Iron Tail. Double yikes. I wanted to really ensure her death here, so I sent in Casparina as a sacrifice to use Curse, hopefully taking her down by the next turn. Of course, she gets one-tapped, so I send in Toadess, hoping to finally get the KO, and she heals. Luckily for me, I get a critical hit Surf that takes her down to critical condition, and the Curse takes effect, bringing Steelix down for good. The only Pokemon left to deal with was this weak-ass Magnemite. I started by putting it to sleep, then used Rain Dance to power up my water moves, and followed it up with a Surf to bring it to half, though she did wake up earlier than expected, taking Toadess down with a Thunderbolt. However, Blink would come in on cleanup, bringing her down with a final Psybeam, securing my win and earning me my 6th gym badge. After that Nailbiter win, I had some errands to run. Firstly, I picked up a possibly illegal Pokemon, Spearow, just so it'd be easier to get around the map. Secondly, I trekked through Route 47 and 48, taking down trainers and getting that well-needed XP. And lastly, arrived at the Safari Zone. Another place of disappointment, as I realized I wouldn't be able to find my last team member here, and you can probably guess at this point who that'll be. Anyways, I did a little research and found I really needed to go to the bug catching contest at the national park, and luckily for me, it was a Tuesday. one of 3 days which hosted the event, so I entered with my Poliwhirl and got to catching. I ended up getting a Beedrill by accident, but it wouldn't matter as a few minutes later I found the one, Scyther, who would effectively replace the Beedrill as my winning catch. And look, the first male on my team, hope at last. His name ended up being Chopper because it sounded cool. From there, I headed east of Ecrotech City, making my way through some caves and water, eventually arriving at Mahogany Town. Here, I'd have my second little skirmish with Team Rocket, first having to make my way up north to the Lake of Rage. And of course, there I'd encounter the mighty shiny Gyarados. But you know the rules. He has to die. That aside, I met up with Lance by the shore, and he basically blames Team Rocket for forcing Magikarp to evolve, and tells me we have some people to kill. So I follow him back to Mahogany Town, witness a possible assault case, and enter some hidden Team Rocket base below ground. Like every game ever, I, a child, am tasked with raiding a criminal organization's headquarters, taking out every member I could find. I eventually reached one of their executives, Petrel, and honestly this battle isn't even worth describing. Just know he got his ass whooped. Aside from that, Lance and I shut down some device being powered by electrodes, saving the day and allowing me to challenge the 7th gym. Admittedly, this was another really easy gym battle. I primarily used Machop to sweep through the gym trainers, leveling up Chopper with an XP share, and made it to the gym leader, Price. In the first round, we matched up Blink vs Seal, and I immediately used Psybeam, which confuses him on the first turn, allowing me to Psybeam a second time untouched, knocking him down. His second Pokemon was Piloswine, and I stuck to the same tactic, just spamming Psybeam until I got him low. His Blizzard ended up doing quite a bit of damage, but a third Psybeam put him down as well, which led to his third and final Pokemon, Dugong. Unfortunately, Blink would get sacrificed to an Ice Shard, but I'd send out Poliwhirl hoping to take him down. I set things up with a Rain Dance and followed that up with Surf, completely forgetting that's ineffective. So instead, I put him to sleep with Hypnosis and started spamming Body Slam. Unluckily for me, he had Sleep Talk, which would effectively take Totus out with an Aurora Beam and an Ice Shard while Dugong slept comfortably. But I wasn't going to let this go on much longer, sending out Muscle to take him down with a revenge. This gave me my 7th gym badge victory, and I was slowly climbing my way to being champion. Although it got a little shaky, this team of trade evos were really starting to pull through, and none of them were at their final stage yet, which honestly needed to change soon. After defeating Price, I realized I had quite the road ahead towards the 8th gym, and it really wasn't a good look having no final evolutions on my team, so before continuing, I decided to hunt down some evolution items to get some upgrades going. First, I needed to find the King's Rock and Slowpoke well, which would turn my Poliwhirl into Politoed. Usually she'd evolve through trade while holding the item, but this time all I'd have to do is level her up instead. Out of the 2 items I'd be looking for, this was the easiest to get, because the Metal Coat on the other hand was super tedious to find. Unfortunately, there are few ways to get a Metal Coat, and none of them are picking it up off the ground. So the way that I chose was to try to steal it off a Magnemite, who had a 5% chance of holding one, which means I needed to teach one of my Pokemon Thief and undergo 2 hours of grinding until I finally found one. And trust me, those were some hours I wish I could get back. But after the little side questing, I went to Goldenrod City to join Team Rocket as one of their new recruits. You can't tell me I ain't clean. But this hoe ass rival of mine decided to blow up the spot, revealing my true identity and forcing me to take on the Grunt. And yes, it was a quick ass whooping, but I gained something greater than just victory. I gained Scizor. Chopper had finally evolved, making him so much stronger despite his terrible moveset. But yeah, now that I was busted, I had to take them head on, annihilating their terrible Pokemon. And eventually, Poliwhirl would evolve into Politoed, giving me 2 final trade evolutions on the team. I'd then run into one of the 4 Team Rocket executives, Petrel. He literally just had a team of Coughings, which is absolutely absurd. But after the win, there was more business to handle in the Goldenrod underground. So I snuck into their basement and was rudely interrupted by Soul, who wanted to battle in the middle of my SWAT raid. So I granted his wishes, kicking things off going Golbat versus Gertrude. He started by using Air Cutter, doing little damage, and I used rollout to bring him near half. Unfortunately though, on the following turn he confused Ray me, causing Gertrude to hit herself for 3 turns straight until she was brought to critical condition, thus leading me to switch into Kadabra. She took on a critical hit air cutter and delivered a one-shot side beam to take him down. His second Pokemon was Haunter, and thankfully Blink would one-shot him as well, which led to his third Pokemon, Weavile. Here I had to switch into Muscle for the type advantage and one-tapped him with a revenge attack after taking on little damage. Then out came his fourth Pokemon, Feraligatr, who'd use Thrash doing some significant damage, but I countered with Revenge, bringing him below half. I was hoping for the speed advantage, so I decided not to go with Karate Chop. Turns out, I was not faster, barely surviving another Thrash, and dealing a weak ass hit when I could have just double tapped with Revenge. So now I had to switch out in order to save Muscle's life, but lucky me, I had a new Steel type on my team, so I brought him out and tanked a third Thrash pretty easily. From there, one wing attack brought him down for good. Though, Chopper's moves were pretty ass, having no answer for his final Pokemon, Magnemite. On top of that, I ended up getting both paralyzed and confused, not helping my situation at all. So ultimately, Chopper got chopped, only leaving the Magnemite just below half, which was okay because Muscle would save the day with a Karate Chop, taking down all of Soul's Pokemon and securing the win. His interruption aside, I got the keycard, went back to the radio station, and went on to take on Team Rocket's 3 remaining executives. First was Proton, who had the Team Rocket starter pack squad. Blink just one-shot both his Golbat and Weezing, bringing him down for good. Next I took on Ariana, who had a little more diversity to her squad. I'd start by taking down her Arbok with Psybeam, but hit a little wall going against her Murkrow, though Gertrude would handle that pretty easily, dealing 2 rollouts for a knockout. Her final Pokemon was Vileplume. I'll give her some points for being unique, but Chopper handled her as well with a few wing attacks, taking Ariana down. Last but not least, I faced off against Archer, who's really running the show. I went up against his Houndour with Toadess in the first turn, getting an easy one-shot with Surf. He then sent out Houndour's big bro, Houndoom, who'd end up doing some big damage with Feint Attack. I managed to get off his Surf, putting him at yellow, but his second attack would take down Toadess, so I brought in Muscle to do some damage, and she just barely survives a Fire Fang at just 2 HP, but delivers a one-shotter with Revenge, taking down the Houndoom for good, which led me to his final Pokemon, Coughing. He'd end up killing off Muscle, but Blink would swoop in for the knockout with Psybeam, defeating Archer and getting rid of Team Rocket for good this time. Just to give a little of my own opinion, I think this game has the worst villains of the first 6 generations. It's like a subpar wannabe Team Rocket, but without Giovanni they really didn't put in any work for real. You know, usually I'm faced with global destruction or world domination, but this time they just wanted their boss back. Whatever. Anyways, I continued my adventure, now heading east of Mahogany Town towards Blackthorn City. On my way there on Route 44, my Kadabra would finally evolve into Alakazam after reaching level 37, which is probably considered the strongest trait evolution there is. Eventually, I made it to the Ice Path, which was a much better experience than I remembered, surprisingly enjoying the boulder and ice puzzles, breezing my way to the exit. And from there, I walked right into Blackthorn City, the home of the 8th gym. Now, after taking down a criminal organization, I was feeling, pretty invincible. So with 0 prep time, I walked straight into the gym and went to work. I took down the gym trainers. Though they were a bit difficult, I was confident I could beat the gym leader, no problem. And I was greatly mistaken. Her Gyarados would go on to take down half of my team by itself, and when I finally managed to bring it down, just one of her Dragonairs would clean up the rest of my squad, sending my ass back to the Pokemon Center. Damn. But that loss turned into a lesson, helping me realize what needed to be done. I needed to upgrade my team to the max. I needed to evolve. So that's what I did. For quite a few hours, I grinded XP at the nearby route, and the first evolution to happen was Haunter turning into Gengar. She was followed by Machop evolving into Machamp, and lastly, Graveler into Golem, all at level 37. And with my new team, I felt I was ready to re-challenge Claire and claim my final gym badge. She started the battle with Gyarados once again, and I'd bring out Toadess. I executed my plan of putting her to sleep and switching into Casparina to hit him with a Shadow Ball, and confuse her with a Confuse Ray. Luckily for me, when she woke up she continued to hit herself, letting me get her down to critical condition. Though she did end up using a Hyper Potion, it didn't matter because within a few turns, Casperina would get the win with a few more Shadow Balls completely untouched. Her second Pokemon was Dragonair, and I stuck to my Confuse Ray plan, but got paralyzed by a Thunder Wave in return. So I switched into Muscle, which may have been a bad move, since I was immediately brought below half and paralyzed. Luckily for me, she managed to pull through, using Revenge to get her to red, and tanking another Dragon Pulse to hit Dragonair with a final counter attack, putting her down for good. This led to Claire's third Pokemon, Kingdra. With nothing I could really do here, Muscle was killed, forcing me to switch into Casperina. With her, I do something a little desperate, just barely surviving a Hydro Pump and then offing myself with Curse, but it would be worth it in the end. I then brought out Toadess, who'd survive a Dragon Pulse and return with a Hypnosis, putting Kingdra to sleep. And it's barbecue chicken from there. A few body slams paired with a Curse doing some chip damage, Kingdra, her strongest Pokemon, was taken down. Her final Pokemon was another Dragonair, and I used Toadess to put her to sleep with Hypnosis. Following that, I sent in Chopper to do some damage with U-Turn, switching in Blink to deal the final blow with Psybeam, completing a team combo for the win. But it turns out she's a sore loser, and didn't want to give up my gym badge, so I had to speak with her big bro to talk some sense into her. Which he did after aura checking me to make sure I was valid, I guess. After that little fiasco, I set my sights on the Pokemon League, nearly reaching the end of my journey, but before I could continue, there was some legendary shit I had to handle. First, I went to the professor's lab to collect a Master Ball. Secondly, I flew to Ecrotech City to beat up some Kimono girls, and lastly, I journeyed up the bell tower in search of the legendary Ho-Oh. Now, I wasn't a fan of the tower puzzles, but I did make it to the top, and behold, a harem of women and a mythical monster. I told you it was some legendary shit. Now, I did end up killing Ho-Oh and leaving the woman high and dry, literally, because I had more important things to do, like taking on the Pokemon League. So I embarked on that adventure, traveling up and through Tojo Falls, beating down trainers on Route 26, and finally making it to my beloved Victory Road. And after a few twists and turns, I found the exit, where I'd battle my rival Soul for the last time. We kicked things off going Sneasel versus Casperina, and I knew already this was a bad type matchup, so I brought in Muscle to tank some attacks and deliver the one tap with Revenge. His second Pokemon was Kadabra, also a bad type matchup, so I switched into Chopper for another one tap with U-Turn, which led me to his third Pokemon, Haunter. Luckily for me, I had already brought Casperina out, and she'd one-shot as well with a Shadow Ball, though the fun wouldn't last for long once he brought out the real menace, Feraligatr. I had managed to confuse him with Confuse Ray, but was brought to critical condition after a crunch attack, so I decided to sacrifice Casperina by using Curse, which took her out for a greater cause. Next, I brought out Chopper, and he got the perfect sequence anyone could ever ask for, having Feraligatr hit himself, then dealing a critical hit with a wing attack, and finally, Curse doing enough damage to take him down. This led me to his fifth Pokemon, Golbat, so I used U-Turn to switch out Chopper in return for Blink, and of course, annihilating him with a Psybeam, which brought out his final Pokemon, Magneton. I'd use a Psybeam which didn't do as much damage as hoped and end up paralyzed, which led me to send out Gertrude. She'd tank a little Magnet Bomb and deal the final blow with Earthquake, putting down his team for good, and giving me my final victory against Soul. Now the rival battle went smoothly, but upon doing some research I found the Elite Four would go all the way up to level 50, while most of my Pokemon were only in their mid-30s. So I decided to do a few hours of training off cam to gain some levels and fix up some movesets, getting all of my Pokemon to level 42. Unfortunately though, I forgot to record a team check before entering the Elite Four, so here's one from after, with no real changes except a few levels and Chopper's new move. And now it was time to see what I've been missing out on all these years. How good are Trait Evolution Pokemon really? And is a team built of only Trait Evos capable of being the champions of Johto? We were about to find out. So with that, I walked into the Pokemon League and challenged my first Elite Four member, Will, the Psychic type user. We start our battle going Xatu versus Casperina, and she's light work, going down to a single Shadow Ball. Her second Pokemon was Jinx, who I hoped to one tap with Shadow Ball, but I just missed the mark and was taken down instantly to a Psychic. But fortunately for me, Blink would come to solve all my problems, and although she'd heal, one Shadow Ball brought her past half, and another one would take her down for good, Her third Pokemon was another Xatu, and I just stuck to the same strategy using Blink Shadow Ball, but unfortunately I'd be confused and hit quite hard by an ominous wind, though just one more Shadow Ball would take her down as well, leading to her fourth Pokemon, Executor. Here I decided to heal with Recover, tanking an Egg Bomb, and delivering a pretty strong Shadow Ball. Sadly, Blink would die to a following Egg Bomb, but Chopper would swoop in to save the day, knocking out Executor with a Wing Attack. Her fifth and final Pokemon was Slowbro, who I did decent damage to with a U-turn, switching into Toadette. And from there, I'd use Hypnosis to put her to sleep, bringing back Chopper, hoping to deal the final blow with another U-turn. Yeah, just missed the mark. From there, I pretty much just said fuck it and used Perish Song, and within 3 turns she was a guaranteed goner, giving me my first E4 win. I then moved on to challenge Koga, the poison type user. We kicked things off with Ariados versus Casparina, and immediately I confused him with Confuse Ray, then switched into Gertrude for the type advantage. From here, an Earthquake plus Confusion brought him down to critical health and caused him to full restore, though it was futile since 2 rollouts was all it took for the knockout. I then went up against his Fortress and he used Protect, stopping me from hitting with rollout, which led to a switch in strategies of just spamming Earthquake until he was low health and a rollout for the KO. This was perfect since his third Pokemon was Venomoth, just getting one shot by a second rollout, which led to his fourth, Muck. He managed to avoid the rollout but would ultimately get one tapped from an Earthquake, bringing me to his final Pokemon, Crobat. And trust me, he was a tricky one. He started off using Double Team, but I ended up landing a Rock Blast, which put him in the stickiest situation possible, just barely clutching up with a Citrus Berry. I hit him once again with a Rock Blast, bringing him to yellow health, and then somehow his single Double Team warranted me going 1 for 5 on my next 5 turns trying to hit him with anything. Throughout those countless turns of missing, he chipped me down to nothing, taking out Gertrude, but he had absolutely no chance against Blink, getting one shot by a sidekick, ending my string of bad luck, giving me the win. My third Elite Four member would be Bruno, the fighting type user, and I decided to start off strong this time with Blink at the head of the attack, and I absolutely annihilated his whole team. Clean sweep. First his Hitmontop got packed, then his Onix got packed. When I reached his Machop, just to be safe I used Reflect, but right after, he got packed too, which led to his Hitmonlee getting packed, and finally, Hitmonchan super packed. At this point, I was looking like UPS, hand delivery if you get what I'm saying, which led me to my final Elite Four challenge, Karen, the Dark type user. The first Pokemon I sent out was Muscle to go up against Umbreon, and one shot with a Cross Chop was all it took to take her down. She then sent out her Murkrow, who'd be a bit tougher to deal with, making me send out Gertrude for the type matchup. She ended up doing a little damage with a Feint Attack and Sucker Punch, but just 2 rollouts would take her down as well, which led me to her much stronger Vileplume. And with not much I could do here, I had to let Gertrude go to a Petal Dance. But no worries, as Blink came out to save the day, packing up Vileplume with a Psychic Attack. Her fourth Pokemon was Gengar, who ended up missing a Focus Blast and also got one tapped by a Psychic, which led to her final Pokemon, Houndoom. Here I used a Reflect just to avoid taking too much damage and then sacrificed Blink to a Dark Pulse. But Toadette came in swiftly to save the day, putting her to sleep with Hypnosis, then using Perish Song, guaranteeing her death as certain. Though she stayed asleep long enough to be taken down with 2 Surfs, so I guess the Perish Song wouldn't matter after all, securing my final Elite Four win. I then went on to take on the champion, Lance, where we'd really find out if trade Pokemon we've been missing out on all these years are really worth the hassle. The hassle of making friends to trade with, of course. And for my returning viewers, you already know this wouldn't be an AJXP video if I didn't get my ass whooped on the first attempt. Yes, Lance got one over on me, really messing me up with his full team of Dragon types. And honestly, just looking at his squad, it's like he stacked the 4 coolest and strongest Pokemon he could find, and then added 2 more Dragonites for shits and giggles. But them Dragonites were surely a problem. However, this channel is all about getbacks, and I was feeling a 2016 Cavs comeback in the air. So I re-challenged Lance once again and got straight into battle. We started things off with Gyarados vs Casparina, and immediately I used Thunder to deliver the one-hit KO I needed. His second Pokemon would end up being Aerodactyl, so I switched into Gertrude, hoping for a type advantage. And I'll admit, at first it looked super shaky, as his first 2 crunches brought me to low health, one of them being a critical hit, but I trusted the process with Rollout, doing a little damage at first, but then nearly wiping him on the following turn. And although he used a full restore, he stood no chance against my 3rd Rollout in a row, knocking that dinosaur out the damn sky. But his big bro wasn't impressed at all, and crippled Gertrude on the spot. So I sent in Toadette to handle him. Never mind. So I sent in Blink to handle him, and used a sidekick that brought him to half. Luckily for me, he'd miss his Blizzard attack, giving me an opening to deal a finishing blow with Psychic, but I just missed the mark and ended up getting taken out with the Dragon Rush. No worries though, as Casparina would clean him up quick with a Shadow Ball. His 3rd Pokemon was Charizard, and I had to confuse him with Confuse Ray, then hit him with a Thunder as he continued to hit himself. Though he did use a full restore, just 1 Shadow Ball and a 2nd Thunder was enough to take him down unscathed. Now for his 2nd Dragonite, I already knew I stood no chance, so I used Curse as a desperate move to deal chip damage, and sacrificed Casparina for the greater good. I then sent out Chopper to tank some outrages and stack some defense while I waited out Dragonite's slow death. In between, I ended up reviving Casparina since I already knew I'd need to use this tactic again with the 3rd Dragonite, and finally got this one to die. He then of course sent out his 3rd Dragonite, who absolutely Chopper. But regardless, I needed Casparina on the field, and confused him in the first turn, causing some concerning self-harm. Funny enough, I followed in his footsteps with Curse, taking half my own health to deal some more chip damage. He remained confused on the next turn, so I used Shadow Ball to deal some more damage. Unfortunately though, he'd snap out of it and annihilate Casparina, which forced me to bring out my final Pokemon, Muscle. And I had absolutely no idea Lance had another full restore, which meant all of that battling was damn near for nothing. So to be safe, I max revived Chopper and then brought him in to use U-turn. And surprise surprise, he full restored for what, the 4th time? So I started cheating too, using a Hyper Potion on Muscle, stalling his health a bit more, then sending Chopper back out for the last time, and watching his final Pokemon die to the ghost of Casparina, securing me my final win, which took for f***ing ever. And I know, you probably would have appreciated a summarized version of that fight, but if I had to sit through that shit, then so do you. Anyways, after completing my last challenge of the game, I finally knew what it felt like to wield the power of Trade Evolution Pokemon. Creatures who were once locked away by my inability to make friends were now the championship team in the Johto region, making this run a success. In all, do I think human interaction is worth the hassle of getting a Trade Evolution Pokemon? Maybe back in the day. But with the help of altering my game file, I can get them regardless. So is cheating your game worth it to get Trade Evolution Pokemon? For sure. Some of them are actually pretty damn strong, so it's definitely worth it to have them on your team. Which leads me to my favorite, and probably most people's favorite, the MVP of this run, Blink the Alakazam. Ever since she evolved into Kadabra, she has been the best Pokemon on my team, easily sweeping through Team Rocket and some of the Elite Four. Now the runner-up is pretty obviously Casparina the Gengar. She was able to cheese some easy wins with Curse, and her Shadow Ball did some great damage, solidifying her spot on any team. But with that, we've reached the end of this video. Leave a like and comment any suggestions for what challenge I should take on next. Also, if you're new to the channel and made it this far, consider subscribing so you don't miss out on my next upload. Plus, it would really help me out. And if you want to see more fun Pokemon videos like this one, I'll leave them up on your screen to click. Until next time.